Hi, and welcome to Schmooze with Suze. I'm Suze Montgomery, your host, and we've got a really neat show today. This is a special. We have been thinking about doing this for a while, and it's always impressive to me when we get this kind of talent on our show that are larger than life and that actually create larger than life effects. So we have Steve Neal and Mary Cacciapaglia on the couch, and boy, you guys are big time. I mean, we're, living in Ventura. Why? First of all, let's get a little bit of bio information. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in San Francisco, born and raised.
And so you came, how'd you get to Ventura?
Well,
longer than 2 seconds, right?
Longer than 2 seconds. Well, I can do it very short. I was born and raised in San Francisco. After high school, during high school, I was very interested in filmmaking because of influences of Stanley Kubrick. I later went on to work for Francis Ford Coppola, the American Zoetrope, and after that closed, I came to Hollywood and got hired by the studios.
Wow.
And I worked in the studios system and had my own shop doing effects and miniatures and creatures and things like that for about 40 years. Then my late wife passed away. In 2013, I met Mary, who lived in Ventura, and that's why I'm in Ventura.
Ah.
Plus, it was great to get away from the valley. I'd had enough of the heat and the craziness, and being up here is beautiful. So
you can't
not
compare
to mention Mary being beautiful. So
of course she is. That's why you picked her. Mary, you're not from here either.
No, I'm from all over the place.
Okay, born and raised?
Well, I was born in Salem, Mass. Grew up in the South Bay, California, and then went to high school in New Hampshire. So I was
back and forth.
Back and forth, and then back to college in California.
And why Ventura?
Well, I moved to Ventura with my late husband, who passed away in 2012, and we just fell in love with the place. He wanted to retire here, and this is where I ended up.
It is magic.
It is totally magic.
Besides you creating magic. Let's talk about that. Now, you said you started, that was an early dream for you, actually getting involved. Why special effects rather than, like, say, acting or some other aspect?
I did that too, but...
Oh, okay. No.
Growing up, I loved science fiction. I was surrounded by a family that was very artistic and also scientists and musicians, and I had a real fascination with science fiction, predominantly. Horror was interesting too, but science fiction was my real bag, if you want to call it that. And when I was going to high school, Star Trek came on the air, and I loved Star Trek because I loved the whole idea of a future like that for the planet, one where we all lived together in harmony and explored space and dropped all our differences. And I just thought it was a great show, and I really wanted to do something like that or work on the show. So later I saw other films that influenced me, and I started making short movies in high school, which eventually led to me making more elaborate 16mm films. And then I met Francis Ford Coppola.
How'd you meet him?
They had an article in the San Francisco Chronicle when George Lucas was making THX 1138, the film with Robert Duvall.
And what was the storyline on that? Was that also futuristic?
It was futuristic, and it was about, we had destroyed the planet on the surface, and we're living underground. That was the basis of the story.
Not too futuristic now.
And of course, the society was all controlled by drugs and conformity and that kind of Brave New World type, 1984 type stuff, which I found fascinating. I loved it. But so George was doing that film there, and there was an article, and the American Zoetrope said, we're here to help young filmmakers. I took them quite literally and called them on the phone, and they were so taken by my boldness to do that, they invited me down to look at my films that I had made. So I went there. I'm sitting in an office with Francis Ford Coppola, and I really didn't know much about Francis at that time. Or George I did know because I knew about THX. And I'm sitting there with these pretty powerful filmmakers, and I'm showing them my films on a pull-down screen in Francis's office. and they allowed me to intern there. I worked there, I helped them on projects and on films that they were doing, and they allowed me to do my own films there, and Francis was really my film school.
So with that, projecting a little bit forward on that, why they reached out to you and allowed you and mentored you more or less, you do that today.
Yeah, I do.
And you give back in that way. You're, as a scientist, but also inventor and businessman, this is all integrated in who you are. And I'm starting to really understand you a lot now with your social commentary as well, because the social commentary came in with the filmmaking and I have to admit, this is guilty as charged. I've never seen Star Trek. I'm probably the only person you'll ever meet that's never seen Star Trek. I don't know what it is, it just wasn't on my radar. Maybe I was busy raising kids or whatever I was doing or working. But I didn't realize until we talked about off camera that it had social commentary attached.
Oh, very much so.
So that really, again, at the early part of your career, integrated all the elements that basically who you are today.
Yeah,
with the social
true.
commentary, you're caring about mentoring other young students and some of our students here at FACE, but also the aspect of some of your creations that I'm looking at over my shoulder here, which, and Mary, you worked on these as well. You actually did physical work on these. You created these along with Steve, right? So what was your contribution to, is this the, I am so ignorant, the Starship?
This is the current Enterprise, for the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, and this model was created. It's from a plastic model kit that's available, but they're not lit up like this, and in fact, they don't have the capability of going into warp drive either. So this model was completely. All the lighting, all the paint work, everything is on it is all studio quality, what we would do for a motion picture, except it would be much larger. Interesting.
So, wow, you are really good. I didn't realize that you could actually create this in your studios. And the amazing thing is, you're here in Ventura, you're around the corner from us right here. And you can do this, and then I guess you contract with studios to actually get your work. What is it, you sell it?
We can do that. Well, we get contacted by collectors to build models that they would like to have, or creatures that they would like to have that were from films.
What's the story on this guy with the weird eyes?
Well, this is a character from our TV pilot, but something is there.
Okay, let's stop there, because I want to know about this. I saw that on the website, and I'm kind of curious. You are now creating your own film, or you have created your own film?
Yes.
And it's called?
It's a hopeful TV series. And when I say hopeful, because we created the pilot ourselves, Mary and I together produced the pilot entirely on our own funds and with the help of many people here from the school who have become our friends, who are vastly talented and made it possible for us to do this without taking financing from the outside. Because whenever I've taken financing for a project, as they did with my first feature motion picture, they screwed it up. Oh. With it, they just turned it into their own, and then of course I was unhappy with it, and it didn't do so well.
So you lose all creative ability then?
Pretty much. They tell you you're not, and they always tell you the same thing. Well, look, you do this our way this time, and we'll finance it, and the next time you can go make something all on your own, do it your own way, which is never true. So
they steal your child?
Basically, yeah.
That's
and I have problems with that. So
yeah, so I would have problems with that too, since it's your creation.
Yeah.
And then all they get is the distribution rights, and they get to sell it, and they make the profit, and you're out of the picture. That stinks.
Yeah.
Well, this guy from the movie, now the name of the movie again is The
TV pilot is But Something Is There.
And what's the storyline?
The storyline is based on my own experiences from childhood up to present day with the paranormal, with the unknown. And it runs in my family, and it happened to my grandfather, and it happened to my mother, and you know, in today's culture, people who don't understand the phenomenon and don't treat it scientifically, they call it alien abduction. But to call it alien abduction would mean to actually know for sure, based on data you've collected that they're aliens. And no one having these experiences who honestly tells you they're having the experiences can claim that, because no one knows.
That's almost like a negative, is it not?
But something is there.
Well, you
the whole thing is that there is something to it. It can be measured. You can collect data on it. You can get evidence, and it suggests that there's something, like so many things in the past that were considered fringe, are now part of science, quantum physics.
Roswell, New Mexico comes to mind, okay? You know, I've read enough about it and educated myself enough to know that something did happen.
Something definitely
but
happened.
But the federal government chose to negate that and to more or less denounce it as it really occurred. So with that led me to explore other information, because it's like, why would they cover that up? Why would they not, you know, not necessarily embrace it, but at least educate themselves enough to be able to understand, or maybe even, you know, have the government invest in something to be able to educate people? Why would that happen? I mean,
that would be a whole other show, a quite long one at that.
Because, I bet.
You know, I mean, just the fact that so many of the things that they released to the public about Roswell, to explain it away,
why would they go to elaborate lengths?
But things like they dropped dummies from airplanes in experiments, and that's what the bodies were found in the desert. Yet they didn't do those testings with the dummies until 1957. They didn't think the public would look into that and realize that they told a lie. So if they're lying about that,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but like I said, that's a whole other show.
That's a very elaborate cover-up and misinformation, to, you know, and at least keep your mind open. We can't be the only life here.
No, that's true.
I mean, didn't we? I saw something last week on Saturn. They found on one of the planet Saturn, a river below that, and an atmosphere that could have life. So we're at least going in that direction. But then again, I'm sitting here, and we talked about this off camera too, how I'm a little disturbed about our current administration and how they've negated a lot of scientific fact, or trying to eliminate it, or reduce it, or just eliminate it on scientific fact. Today is Earth Day.
And what are they doing in Washington today?
Exactly. So you have people that don't believe. Okay, before we go into that next show, can you show me some of the creations you brought with you?
Sure.
I'm very curious. What's the story on the Spock ears, too?
We'll start with this one because
another
thing that I saw when I was in high school was a movie called Planet of the Apes, and what fascinated me about that film was the makeups on the actors and actresses. The ape makeups were really quite amazing to me, and I'd always had an interest in makeup because I loved Frankenstein and all the Universal films, the Hammer films, and I always thought it'd be neat to make monsters. That was another thing I wanted to do. So on my own, I learned how to do this. And that was a big part of how I got hired in the studios. When I came to LA in '74, they hired me to do prosthetic makeup. One of the first things I worked on was the Planet of the Apes TV show. I loved the Planet of the Apes. I got to meet one of my heroes, John Chambers, who created this makeup. And this is a recreation, because these makeups rot over time. This is made out of very soft foam rubber. But this is what Roddy McDowall wore when he did Planet of the Apes, and they're a foam rubber prosthetic that's made to fit them exactly. You can see the impression. This is my face on the inside, and I did a lot of conventions, science fiction conventions and stuff, made up as that character from Planet of the Apes, and that got me attention from the studios. They would see me there, and that's how I met Gene Roddenberry. So later on, I ended up working on Star Trek.
So again, going back to none of this is serendipitous. All of this is tied together, right?
I ended up working for John Chambers, who created these makeups.
That's fantastic.
In fact, and he became my friend as well. And so that led to, I met Fred Phillips. Fred Phillips was the makeup artist on Star Trek. He was also the makeup artist on a great TV show called The Outer Limits, which was on during the 60s.
I loved that when I was a kid.
He did all the makeup on that. And Fred was this wonderful human being who I met and became friends with. And I actually got him some work in the industry in his later years because he wanted to keep working on some shows that I recommended him for. Long story on that one, but he remembered that and one day called me up and said, hey, you want to work on Star Trek? And I thought he was joking because Star Trek had been off the air for a very, very long time. And he said, no, we're making a movie, and would you like to, I could use your help. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and I need help. Well, I was in heaven.
What a gift.
Yeah, so the first thing he asked me to do was to recreate Leonard's ears. Now, they had already cast Leonard Nimoy's ears, and he had the casting sitting there, and he put down a pair of the ears from the original show that he still had in a bag that were still okay. They hadn't rotted away. They were in perfect condition. Sent them down, said, I want you to reproduce these exactly. They have to look the same. And that was just an amazing thing to be given that job because...
How long would it take you to do a pair of ears?
Well, it took me like a day or so to sculpt those.
That's all?
Well, they're just ears. It doesn't take... I'm a very fast sculptor.
Yeah, but that's
and I
quite
can sculpt and
sophisticated.
draw. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a whole process of sculpting clay on a stone casting with stone. Back then we used a stone plaster, and then we'd make molds on that and run foam rubber in it, and they'd have a very fine little blender edge on it. We could blend it into his ears. And
you do all of this in the studio right here a couple blocks away?
We do.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And these are castings of the original ears from that show. So
that's about the only thing I could recognize from Star Trek because I didn't watch.
With the ears.
With the ears.
I also, years later, did Klingons for Star Trek VI, and then I had to make lots of...
what's a Klingon?
A Klingon is one
of the...
Not the
what I'm... Yeah, okay.
It's one of the alien races, and they have these foreheads that look like this. Many of the people in the audience will recognize this as looking like Worf's head in Star Trek
Let's put it on
Next
you.
Generation. Put it on me.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. This is your mask?
This is made to fit me, yeah.
And these Klingons were good guys or bad guys?
Well, it depends on your point of view.
Okay, another societal comment.
Well, originally they were bad guys, but then we learned later on in the history of Star Trek to work with them, and they became friends. We dropped their differences and started working together. So,
gee, kind of Nirvana. Kind of where it should be.
They're a warrior race, but we learned through diplomacy to end the wars.
You want to go to Washington, D.C.?
Unique concept, diplomacy.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That was the whole thing about Star Trek, is that it was always made commentary on our actual situation.
I wasn't aware of that. Maybe if I would have been at that time, I probably would have watched.
It covered so many issues.
I thought it was just like, nothing with society when, when it was on the air. I just kind of just bypassed it. Like I said, raising kids or whatever I was doing at the time, but it was like science fiction. And believe it or not, I was not allowed to watch science fiction as a child. I was not allowed to read science fiction. Oh no, my mom was tough. I was not allowed, I had required lists. I had to read the classics, in Latin, by the way. I mean, I had, yeah, right? Okay. So I had a different type of education, and I was always fascinated by that. And as an adult, now I can go back on Netflix, thank God we got Netflix, and I can go back now and get educated on your world. So now I can go back there and just pull it right up and watch it.
I would start with the original Star Trek TV show.
Okay.
Because...
how many episodes? How many years was that on?
It lasted 3 seasons.
So a season is a half a year or a year?
It's a year.
Okay. So it lasted 3 seasons. I mean, it's considered one of the classics of all time.
Yeah, if you watch it, you'll see why.
Okay. So Mary, you are the glue here. Are you the one that keeps everything running at the studio, kind of? Like, is that your job?
Yeah, I get stuck with the business part.
Okay. But then again, I know you've got a creative side, too.
She's a brilliant artist. She's
yeah,
very,
you do
very
art.
talented.
What kind of art do you do?
I paint. I'm a photographer. I melt plastic.
Yeah,
she can do everything I can do.
I don't.
Basically.
I have
she
not.
hasn't sculpted yet.
I have not touched. I've helped with some castings and cleaning them up for people, but I haven't actually thrown the clay yet.
Okay, that's like pottery?
No, that's
it's
like what
sculpting.
you have to do.
This gets sculpted in
this.
clay.
And it's in clay.
On the person's life mask, and then we make a mold on it and produce a latex mask
Now,
that
a
they
life
can wear.
mask is like plaster on your face, like you can't breathe stuff?
No, actually, we use it's a prosthetic grade alginate. It's like the material they use to cast your teeth with, except it gets put over your whole face, and it's backed up with plaster bandage, The passenger bandage sets up, we pull it off, and we can fill this with plastic or stone or a plaster, whatever we want, and pull out a replica of your face.
But
This is very sophisticated.
I promise we don't suffocate you.
It's pretty old technology, really. And,
It is?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's become more sophisticated because now we're not using foam rubbers and latex so much. We're using prosthetic grade silicones, which are very, very lifelike. And we use that in our show, But Something Is There, because we had a lot of interesting looking humanoid type beings in it that we had to make by putting the makeups on the actors.
So when you said you completed this project, correct?
It's all shot, and we're now in the editing process. And in fact, one of the people from our school right here,
Our editor,
Mr. Isaac Blair, is not only doing editing, he also is our sound person, and a very good one, but he's a brilliant editor because he recut some stuff that I did, and I said, that's it, you're the editor. And he's like, oh, okay.
Well, Isaac's
But he also does
extremely
visual
talented.
effects. And in other words, his work with After Effects and doing compositry and compositing elements and putting together.
This is a whole new
CG,
language for me, so okay.
He's good at all of it. He's great. We could not be doing this show without him.
Well, Isaac is very talented. I know Isaac from, he worked with my husband up at the Ojai Theater where he actually did sound, and yeah, there's many facets to Isaac.
Can do
I think he
anything.
landed well here. I think this, Isaac, I don't know, but is this how this whole thing started at Vase with you?
Exactly how it started.
Amazing, amazing. And that's something else again. I mean, we talked about this, but I'd just like to revisit that for just a second. Sure. We don't really look at students, no matter what the age, you know, as a holistic person. I think education today, and I mean, this is a whole person effect too, is we look at students, and Nathan and I were talking about that, about how we need to look at different modalities that suit a person's learning ability. Not one size fits all. Like when we were kids growing up, you know, you had to fit in a certain box. And if you didn't fit in that box, you were kind of like an outsider. I mean, I was not the...
Same here.
Same. So today, at least, we have recognized to a larger degree, but I don't think it's been fully explored, and how we can actually access that for looking at whole person ability. What are you good at? Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? What is your talent? So again, when I was a kid in school, you took an entrance exam at the school I went to, and whatever your score was, you got categorized and shoved in this box. I want to take typing, and to this day, I'm a two-finger typer, right? I didn't get to take typing, and so I wanted to learn typing. I wanted a business course, but no, I was an honors student, which means I had 4 years of math, 4 years of language, 4 years of this curriculum, which I wasn't really suited for. And so I think by having maybe trade schools or career technical education, which by using Isaac and other members that are here with us today, and you as well, you would be one of those people, a career technical, which is a real career, paying a living, making a living, but it's what you are good at. And if you're good at it, you love it, you're good at it, and you're successful. I think that's the way we need to look. Like when I was talking to Terry Roos before we started, where do you fit? Where do you fit? So today, I think we're exploring that better and better. I think on a local level, we need to explore that even more so. And I'm grateful for places like Vase that actually produce that kind of a student that is successful, that just isn't one of those box people. But it wouldn't have worked for you. It wouldn't have worked for you. It wouldn't have worked for me. But again, opportunities. And I think that makes a person better because you're doing what you love and you make a living at it. And it opens up the opportunities to community working together to create your project. And your project, I'm excited to see this. So you're in Edit Bay now?
We're in Edit Bay now, and we're doing visual effects. I also do CGI.
What's CGI?
Computer.
But it's computer animation.
Oh,
so there's
like all that slick stuff you see?
There'll be a lot of stuff that when you see this show, you won't realize are computer graphics, where we've painted out buildings and put in a field, or we added stuff to the sky, Or we took a dirt road and made it look like Marin County and put telephone poles in. We've got a scene where a child is offered a lizard by Peter Fox. He finds this lizard, and the lizard's not afraid of him. There's a whole discussion about, with the child about the lizard and why it's not afraid and how you're connected with nature. And the lizard, the whole time, and it leaps onto his hand, and he leaps to the child's hand,
How cool.
is not a real lizard. But everyone who watches it will think it is. But then there's other stuff in it, of course, with objects in the night sky and stuff, and people automatically go, well, that must be CG, you know.
So when you complete this project, I don't know how far, you know, you said you're in Edit Bay. When you complete the project, can you come back and can we do another whole show on the project itself?
Sure, yeah.
I would
You'd
love
have
to be
do a
able
whole
to
show
do
on
that
it.
because I want to see it, and I think everybody in our community is very interested in what you create and what you produced right here locally. I mean, you don't have to go to Hollywood to get top quality.
Oh, no. Hollywood's everywhere now.
I love this. This is so cool. I think we're running out of time, and boy, we need you back. I'm very serious about having you back. I want to see it when it's completed.
Oh, you will.
What a great opportunity to have you in our community to not only give us more, but give back. And I think by giving back to your community, by having our students involved in your production and your work, you're just going to make this all the better. Thanks for being here. Gosh,
Well,
what a
thank
treat
you.
to have
Thank
you
you,
here.
Suze.
Thank you.
Thanks for being, oh, I'm so excited. And thank all of you for being here today too. And we're gonna have them back when this is complete so we can show you what the finished product is. And thank of our audience. Thanks guys for all showing up, my friends that always support me, and the community at large that was curious enough to see what we do here and the magic that we create here at FACE. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you again.